Hello, welcome back to the half hour with Carson.
And Braiden.
And we're doing our second part of the Lighthouse podcast that we started. This half of our podcast is going to be our spoiler analysis. So a strong spoiler warning here. Yeah, we're really going to be... Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
We're assuming you've already seen the film at this point. We're just going to be discussing it basically with you, so...
Yeah, we're going to be going into the very specifics of the story and the plot line, all the things that really stood out to us. Mm-hmm. So definitely listen to our first podcast if you haven't yet. And if you have not seen the film, once again, I strongly suggest that you go see it before you listen to this podcast.
It's a very, very good movie, so you definitely don't want to miss out. Even if you're not watching this podcast, listen to this podcast. It's a good movie.
All right. So we're going to start getting into our spoilers now and really digging into the different scenes in this film. So we're going to start off with the opening scene of the film, which is really, atmospheric.
Yeah, as far as, getting the setting established, it does a very good job. We see the two old wikis leaving the lighthouse, and then, our two new wikis, Pattinson and Defoe, which they're called wikis, right?
Yeah, wikis. Right. That's what they were saying.
Yeah. Coming into the lighthouse, they've got their crate of all their belongings, and then we see them standing there right in front of the door of the lighthouse, just looking straight into the camera. It looks exactly like a painting. It's beautiful.
Yeah, no joke. It really does. It looks like a picture you'd see, like framed on a wall of a bar or something like that. They just stop and they let it stay there for so long, and you're just so like enamored with this one shot, because it looks like a beautifully composed picture that you'd see in some like a sailor bar or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what else to describe it as, but the best thing I think about them setting up this film is whenever they first come in and you can see the waves crashing against the side of the boat, and then it goes into the boat and you can see their perspective of being on this boat and riding this boat up towards the lighthouse, seeing the lighthouse and hearing those horns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the foghorns, they really played a very, very big role in setting the idea that this is a very eerie...
Yeah, the symbolism.
Eerie setting, and honestly, throughout the entirety of the film, it makes you feel like you're going mad with the characters.
Yeah, the sound is
it just drones.
It just keeps repeating, and eventually you're just like,
very
man,
strong sound.
It drives you mad at times. And the opening scene is one of the best opening scenes I've seen in a long time, because it does such an amazing job of setting everything up and then pushing you into this world and into this confinement, because you're out in this open and it seems so fresh and new. Mm-hmm. And then it just pushes you into this confinement and this madness.
You're really pushed right into the isolation, like you don't have a choice at that point.
Yeah, and that's because it starts off with such a free an open view, and then it just confines you to this small view, and it makes you really feel mad. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's go into the next scene that we want to talk about. And this one, oh man, this scene was probably one that I remember some people in our theater were actually like made some noises and stuff.
Yeah, it definitely caught me off guard.
I heard some people squirming. So this is when Robert Pattinson, he walks up the lighthouse steps, and while Willem Dafoe is up in the light, or monitoring the light, quote unquote. Mm-hmm.
Tending the
yeah. And he walks up there and he sees the bottom of Willem Dafoe's feet and tentacles moving around.
Yeah.
Like through these little holes up leading into the light. Mm-hmm. And
you can tell that there's rhythmic movement.
There's something going on, and moans.
Yeah.
And
so, if you haven't caught on to what was happening there.
Yeah, he's masturbating to the light, and
possibly with the help of an octopus.
Something like that. I don't know if Willem Dafoe was actually the octopus and those were his tentacles,
Yeah,
or if
because later we see that he sort of transforms into like Neptune almost.
Yeah, which we'll get into that more later. Yeah. But you see tentacles run across the grates up where he's standing, and then he obviously ejaculates and
blows his load.
He blows his load and it drips down right in front of Robert Pattinson's face.
It was just, and I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, no, I was not expecting any of that, to be honest. I wasn't really expecting anything super sexual in this film. No, but there's so much sexual stuff in this film, especially with Willem Dafoe jerking off. There's a lot of masturbation in this film. Yeah,
which it really does make sense though with their isolation. I mean, they're supposed to be on this island for 4 weeks.
Yeah, so you get this feeling of how they need to masturbate. They need to let out their loads. So yep. I mean, but he also goes up. But I mean, Willem Dafoe's up there ejaculating to fucking the light, and it's just so mysterious.
Which starts to build the importance of the symbol of the light throughout the film.
Yeah, that's one of the... It
shows what kind of personal meaning it has to both of them, really.
Yeah, and because it's kind of like Robert Pattinson is kind of looking in. It's like watching somebody have sex with your girlfriend through like a through like a cracked door or something like that. It has that
you're not supposed to see it.
But it has this odd where he feels shut out of something can't be a part of.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So the next scene.
You want to talk about more of the masturbation scenes now?
Yeah, we're going. So about masturbation, let's get into. Oh shit.
Let's see. So Defoe's not the only one who masturbates in the movie. Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson masturbates as well.
Yeah. So at the beginning of the film, we see that he finds this little card figurine of a mermaid, right? So that's kind of his only image of a woman that he has on the island, and he kind of grasps onto that, and that's what he continues to use whenever he's jerking off, because it's his only reminder of what he left in the real world before he was isolated.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. But the actual scene we are about to talk about is when Robert Pattinson goes into this shed. It's like a little shed that he goes to multiple times throughout the film, and this is where he goes to get privacy and masturbate to the figurine. And earlier in this film, he finds the mermaid. I think it's in a dream. I'm not sure. He finds the mermaid washed up on the side of the island.
You're talking about the first time he sees her?
With the first time he sees her, yeah.
No. The first time he sees her, she's out in the ocean, and he walks out to her.
Oh, yes. Okay, so the first time he sees her, she's surrounded by logs, and she's just floating out in the ocean. Mm-hmm. And then the next time he sees her, she's washed up on the side of the island, and he walks up to her, and he starts, kind of touching her.
Yeah, he gropes her a little bit.
He gropes her a little bit, and is, looking at... it kind of goes down her body as you see her... breast and stuff, but it doesn't go too far, Mm-hmm. But it does. It shows that later. she's a mermaid, and she starts making these loud squeals, and you hear those squeals throughout the movie.
I completely forgot when we were planning for this.
Yeah, no.
I think she's supposed to represent the sirens from Greek mythology.
Oh, from what's it called? Odyssey.
Yeah.
Homer's Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Temptation.
That's true. I didn't even think about, because when he starts getting tempted and starts giving into his lust with her sitting in front of him, she starts screaming, making these...
it's this unearthly sound that just unsettles you to your core.
And I think the screams happen in the finale as well.
Yeah, in that last scene with the mermaid.
Which makes even more sense if you connect it to Greek mythology.
Yeah.
Because that's another part where it's sexually driven.
Right.
But anyways, back to the shed scene. He is masturbating to this mermaid, so he's giving into this idea of lust, and he's masturbating to the little figurine, but he's picturing himself in his mind. I thought he actually had sex with her the first time I watched it, but no, he's actually he's picturing in his mind mermaid's like vagina and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Which
and it's very large on screen. Which makes sense in the fact that he's imagining it. Like his temptation for, what he wants is, it's enlarged. So visually it is too.
So he really focuses in on the mermaid vagina.
It's a crazy thing to see in the movie.
Yeah,
but it makes sense for what his context was.
Yeah, when you see it, you're just like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's
big pussy.
I see.
Big pussy.
Yeah, those are some big flaps. But all right. Anyways, so yeah, then the.
I don't even know how to move off from this.
Yeah. No. Okay.
It's our transition, man.
Okay, but then he in his mind it shows him. With his pants around his thighs, just having sex with this mermaid, as he already has his pants around his thighs, masturbating in this tool shed.
It's down to his ankles.
Is it down to his ankles?
Yeah.
I thought it was down to his thighs.
I thought
it was. It's at least down to his knees.
We'll see when we rewatch the movie.
All right.
We're gonna have to.
I don't think it goes past his knees, but he has sex with the mermaid, and he fantasizes about having sex with the mermaid at least, and it's that sequence right. That's a very well edited sequence. I didn't talk about this earlier whenever we were talking about editing, but that's probably one of the best edited sequences in the film.
Really?
Yeah, because it flashes, those
back and forth.
Well, yeah, it goes back and forth between him and the tool in the shed and him out there having sex with the mermaid, and then also flashes those images of like the mermaid vagina, because you can't really get a good look at it. It's just like
thankfully
it's like there and gone,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's a very very great scene. The one that stood out to me a lot. I mean.
Really.
Yeah. I mean, it is a great scene, but at the same time, it's very odd,
Yeah, looking at it without context, it's definitely just disturbing.
Yeah.
But knowing what the context is, what led to that, what he was imagining, I mean, within the story, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And before we move on, I want to talk about this shot that happens after he leaves the shed. He leaves the shed, and then he looks up at the lighthouse, and he sees up in the lighthouse, he sees Willem Dafoe up there masturbating to the light. Well, he's more like engulfed in the light. He has his arms spread wide open, but it seems like he might have just finished or something like that.
Yeah.
Who knows?
We'd already seen the other scene with the octopus tentacles, up in the lights.
Yeah. So what I think that I think they were masturbating at the same time, in that Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe in some way is sexually connected to each other in some odd way,
Right. Which I think we need to wait to talk about this, because this ties into more of the ending.
There's a lot we still have to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go more into the sexual stuff whenever we get to the end. Mm-hmm. So, what else do we have to talk about? Okay, so we can go ahead and get into the spoiler with Robert Pattinson whenever he spills his beans.
Yeah. Why'd you spill your beans?
Why'd you spill your beans?
So, when Dafoe's saying this, if you've seen the movie already, you know this, but he's talking about Pattinson revealing that he, when he was a logger, it was in Canada, wasn't it?
It was up north. He said it was up north, Canada ways. So I think it was just towards Canada. So it was up north.
Yeah. So when he was up there, he I don't remember exactly how he went into revealing that he had done it, but he had killed a man named Winslow, who was also a logger. And
I think that's what was represented by the logs in the water. I think it was his past coming back to him.
Yeah. We see a lot of that of his past coming back to haunt him.
Yeah.
Throughout the film.
And as we talked about with the last podcast, one of the other side characters is the man he killed, who repeatedly comes back through visions, through hallucinations, and he resembles Willem Dafoe's character quite a bit, but just a lot younger.
Yeah. He looks to be blonde. It's hard to tell with the black and white.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell, like, the similarities to a certain extent. I don't think that's what they were going for completely. Now that I've looked more into it and stuff, but whenever I first came out, that's what I thought it was about. I thought it was Willem Dafoe was the guy he killed just growing up, but I don't think it's that anymore.
No.
All right, so
I think the side character that has the most like plot importance was the severed head.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot the.
The severed head that he pulls out through the lobster catcher.
Yeah, is the other wiki, and he only has one eye.
So earlier in the film, Pattinson had questioned Defoe's character about, previous wikis that he'd worked with, and he said that the last one had gone mad, and I don't know if he said that he killed himself for that.
I'm not sure exactly what happened. But I think he said he died.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact that he found his severed head, though.
But he found his severed head, So he's obviously, dead.
Yeah. But, like, the fact that it's a severed head, though, means that someone else had to have done that.
Yeah, and we'll go more into the severed head and the one-eyed stuff later on when we're talking about the ending. A lot of this stuff we need to talk about with the ending.
I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the ending sequence, but we have a lot we have to talk about before we get there. Alright, so the scene where Robert Pattinson is trashing Willem Dafoe's cooking, and oh man, so Robert Pattinson just goes out on this huge tangent where he's just trashing everything about Willem Dafoe. He says he stinks. He all this different stuff, and you
stink. You're old. You're slow. Can't cook for shit.
Yeah, and then Willem Dafoe comes back. He's like, I know you're fond of me. He says, I know
lobster.
Oh yeah, he says, I know you're fond of me lobster. Say it. And it's so funny. It's so funny to hear. It's such a comedic scene, even though it's such a tense scene as well.
Pattinson's ending line
is like, I don't have nothing. Well, he says, I have nothing to say.
No, he says, fine, then have it your way.
Wait,
I like your cooking.
Wait, that's the last part. Wait. So he says, I have nothing to say, and then Willem Dafoe stands up and just says every curse he can think of, and just brings it all down right on Robert Pattinson.
Like 2 minutes.
It's a very long time. He's just cursing him in every single way, and you think the gods are just gonna drop down and destroy Robert Pattinson.
That had to be the breaking point for Defoe.
Yeah, because he just goes insane, and then after he finally stops, Robert Pattinson's just like, fine, have it your way. I like your cooking. And you're like,
the way he says it though, it's like perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect timing, and you're sitting there like, oh, that's such a comedic scene.
This movie's the best comedy I've seen in ages.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good comedy.
Yeah.
All right, now let's get into the next stuff. So the next thing is,
let's talk about the drinking.
About the shift in power. Oh, you want to talk about the drinking?
Yeah.
Okay,
so drinking has a big role in this movie.
Oh, we can go into alcohol now too.
Yeah, so towards the start of the film, when Pattinson's character is, first starting off there at the island, they have their first meal together. He's drinking water, even though Defoe, he insists that he drink alcohol because he knows that, it's just, you can't get away with drinking water on this island. It's always going to be tainted with a taste of salt, and no matter how much you try and purify it. But at a certain point, the water becomes tainted with a dead seagull, or multiple.
Yeah, which will go into the seagull stuff a lot more.
But anyways, this forces him to start taking on drinking, which, after that point, as he had to drink more and more, because you have to drink more alcohol than you do water to keep yourself hydrated.
And I think that plays a huge role in him going.
It assisted for sure in his madness,
because that distorts a lot of his a lot of the reality of what's going on for him. It makes you wonder how much is really happening or how much is really inside of his head.
Yeah,
which is really impressive. How they do that and show the shift.
You don't really realize how much it affects their. Well, I guess you do visually.
Yeah, you can see him
their state
slowly
of mind,
getting.
Though,
yeah, you can see him.
And you don't really realize that until the end.
You can tell that Pattinson in the beginning is a lot more reserved than he is towards the end, and he definitely eventually just completely obviously goes insane.
He commits.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, they actually did run out of their alcohol rations and started drinking kerosene, which was used for the Lighthouse.
Yeah, and we have a lot of thoughts on that one.
Yeah.
We think, well, if we talk about,
get into it.
We'll go ahead and get into that now. We think that with the alcohol and stuff, that led into them starting to drink this kerosene and stuff. Mm-hmm. They had a bunch of nights where they sing and dance and get drunk and stuff like that, and eventually led to them obviously drinking kerosene. Mm-hmm. But we think, at least I think, that this means that they were striving to be the light, to become part of the light, because the kerosene is what they use to put into this light. It fuels the light, right? And then they start drinking it. But I think the only person in this movie that who could really become part of the light was Willem Dafoe, and he had
already become one with the light.
I feel like Robert Pattinson was only drinking the kerosene to strive to become the light. He only wanted to try to become the light because it was like something he wanted to do, but he knew he couldn't. It was like the mermaid. It was like the mermaid and the light are like the same things for Robert Pattinson. They're both, one represents lust and the other represents
wisdom or knowledge.
Knowledge, yeah. The unknown.
Yeah, they're two different things that he can't quite reach.
Yeah.
Yet. And he strives to.
Which it's, yeah. And light, I think, represents like unknown and the future, maybe
so
something.
Wisdom then.
Yeah, wisdom. I think wisdom a lot more than knowledge, but
yeah, I can see that.
All right,
and I think I'd agree with you on that theory of them drinking the kerosene in their pursuit of the light.
And we can actually get into this shot that you were talking about earlier, about becoming the light.
Yeah, so we see
it's part of the final sequence, but we'll go ahead and say it real quick since we're just talking about one shot.
Yeah, so in the scene, this is after Dafoe has started chasing Pattinson with the axe, trying to prevent him from leaving the island on that boat. As they're going back to the lighthouse.
I think this is another part. I think this is after the waves crashing. After the storm, because there's two parts.
They're still kind of jovial with each other.
Yeah, so after this is after the storm, and Willem Dafoe is naked, and he is walking towards Robert Pattinson.
It's in the middle of their chase, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I think you described the shot really well. That made me reimagine it. So I'll let you go and describe it.
Yeah, so we see, Dafoe is naked, obviously, and we see he's grabbing Pattinson's arm with a lot of force, and from his eyes is a light shining directly onto Pattinson's face, and that's really it shows how Dafoe has really truly become the lighthouse. I mean, it's within him. It's shining from his eyes.
Yeah. And, he is the lighthouse.
Yeah. And that also ties into it's a really old idea that the eyes are like the windows into the soul.
Yeah.
All of that. That's really where the human is in you. So there's that connection between them from, the light shining from Dafoe's eyes into Pattinson's eyes.
All right. Yeah. Well, now we can get into the shift in power, where it starts out, and Willem Dafoe is the authority figure, and Robert Pattinson just does whatever he says. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a thing between young and old here, clearly. Yeah. Yeah. I forgot about this, but then another thing with this authority thing, towards the end of the movie, it gets to the point where we can actually even get to this whole part where this is where he starts to beat Willem Dafoe. Robert Pattinson starts to beat Willem Dafoe, and he puts the leash on him. Yeah. And he has him crawl out the door like a dog and crawl up to the bottom of the lighthouse, and then puts him in the pit they just dug up to get more alcohol. I think that he had more alcohol.
Yeah, I think that was what it was for. They got the rations for the alcohol out of that hole that they dug.
Yeah, and then he put him in there, and then he started started burying him while Willem Dafoe is talking.
Yeah, and Willem Dafoe doesn't stop talking. He keeps talking through all that dirt falling not only just around him, but inside of his mouth. Like, he doesn't stop to spit it out. He just keeps on going. And, like, that image, it was powerful enough that I don't even really remember what he was saying.
I don't remember what he was saying either, because it was just like the idea of that, of being buried but still, like, talking to the guy burying you.
It shows his like perseverance. Yeah, I think, like, why he was able to be in the presence of the light. Like, he has that certain quality that allows him to. Yeah,
which eventually Robert Pattinson stops and pulls him out and stuff. And that's
he doesn't pull him out. He leaves him there, and then he comes back. Remember, that's when he attacks Pattinson with the axe.
Oh, okay, yeah, I remember that.
Because he thinks that he's killed him, but he hasn't. He was able to crawl back out. If I'm reading it all correctly.
Well, it's just there's so much that happens.
I know.
It's so hard to keep up with everything.
It's all a blur almost.
Like, it's been a few days since we watched this, so I mean, it's so we can get into the next stuff. We probably should start getting into the next stuff. We can. So we already talked about the wiki who lost his mind, and they found out. But they did have a book monologue. The monologue from Robert Pattinson about looking in Willem Dafoe's book, and then finding out about the older wikis, how he had treated them in the past, and he just shits on Willem Dafoe completely. We can go ahead and just move over that. I just wanted to say something about that real quick.
I want to talk about the seagulls, really, and his last wiki.
The seagulls? Do you want to talk about the other stuff before we jump into the seagull stuff?
What other stuff?
So we already did the burying Dafoe. We did waves crash. Oh, we can talk about the storm before we get into the seagull stuff.
Yeah.
So before the climax of the film, there is another smaller climax where the storm is finally coming, where they've been talking about the wind changes and stuff.
No, we have to talk about the seagulls before this, because this is what...
Okay. We'll talk about the seagulls.
Okay.
I just want to make sure we're not leaving anything out before we jump into the seagulls and the ending.
This is like, it directly leads into the storm.
Well, I want to talk about the seagulls and the ending before we talk, or as like our last thing. You know what I'm saying?
But the seagulls are what caused the storm.
Yeah, just one second. No, I don't want to talk about the. I don't want to talk about the storm yet. I was just saying we'll talk about that when we get to it. I'm just making sure we got everything.
Okay, sorry folks.
Let's go ahead and talk about... Alright, let's talk about whenever Pattinson tries to leave. So Robert Pattinson tries to leave on this boat. And starts pulling it out, and then Willem Dafoe runs out with this axe.
Yeah, and he's screaming, "Don't leave me!
Don't leave me!" And he breaks the bow of the boat. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it or whatever, but he just breaks it. And no, I meant like the bow or whatever.
Oh yeah, no, it was like the back of the boat, I think.
Oh okay, I thought it was.
I can't remember.
I don't know.
It's been too long.
Yeah, and then he starts chasing him with the axe. Starts like doing he does this weird like it's like a skip. Towards him with the axe.
He was missing a leg, remember?
Yeah, he was missing a leg, but it's really intriguing how he like jumps towards him.
The fact that he was able to move with such confidence in that scenario shows his dedication.
Yeah, and such an impressive shot to watch, because it's so. And
I think that does tie into the fact that he's scared of being alone on this island.
Yeah, and
because of what had happened with the last Loki.
Yeah, and it's really disturbing too to watch.
Yeah.
And then once they get inside, we can actually talk about this before we really run into our final stuff. How they keep changing names. They keep changing personalities and names. So they get back in there, and Willem Dafoe looks at him and he's like, "You just chased me with an axe," pretty much, you know? He's like, "You're the one who just chased me with an axe." And it throws you off completely, because you're like, okay, now what the fuck is going on?
It makes you start questioning whether you were actually seeing what happened or seeing things through Pattinson's eyes of what he wants to have happened.
All right, and now do you want to go through whose names what and stuff? Because they keep switching names throughout the film.
For basically like the first half of the movie, we don't hear any names. They basically just refer to each other as, like Yar. Just like and, generalities
pronouns.
like that. Yeah, pronouns.
Yeah.
Then I think it was during one of the dinner scenes, Pattinson asks Defoe's character if he can call him by his name, because he's just sick of it. He's tired of, just being another Wookiee with no name. So he says his name is Winslow. He wants to be called that. So Defoe, after a little bit of deliberation, agrees with that, and he tells Pattinson's character that his name is Thomas Wake. He wants to be called Tom, which later we learn that Pattinson's actual name is Thomas Howard. So
which is really confusing.
There's a lot to follow here, right?
Yeah, which is really confusing. Yeah. The fact of, like...
So, I don't know if it was revealed or if we kind of came to it after talking about it, but we found out that the man Pattinson killed whenever he was a logger was named Winslow.
Yeah.
And so that adds a little bit of, insanity to the fact that he wanted to be called that by
the guy he killed, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is weird, which is very odd.
And there's also the fact that they both have the same basic name.
Yeah,
Pattinson and Defoe.
So they both, you start getting very confused, and like their names keep changing and stuff.
You can see both of them in the other character.
Yeah, but you're meant to be confused a lot.
I think so, yeah.
All right, and another part of this, distortion of reality, we also get the distortion of time, which...
There's one scene, you'll see it in the trailer for the movie.
Where he's like, have we been here for days, weeks? I don't know.
Help me to recollect.
Yeah, and
it really does, I don't know.
It throws you off because it's really early on in the movie too. So it's like it feels like you've only been there.
It's about halfway through.
Really? I felt like it was in the first act of the movie, and it was like.
No, we're still getting.
It's like it had only been a couple days.
Yeah.
Well, it still hadn't felt like weeks. It felt like it had been only a few days.
Yeah, which maybe. You'll notice neither of their hair really changes. It doesn't show either of them shaving. Which the only person I think you'd really notice it with is Pattinson, because he kept his beard so short, so you don't really notice if it's been days or weeks.
You know what that reminds me of then?
What?
You know what this reminds me of? If with the not knowing of the passage of time and then them changing names and stuff like that. That reminds me a lot. It's okay. We went over time, but we need to talk about these things. Yeah. It reminds me a lot of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Yeah, there's no indication of time in that.
And that's what I'm talking about. Feels a lot. Maybe they're in purgatory, and the light is like heaven.
So this could be entirely Pattinson's character reliving things and
and
he's a different scenario.
He's suffering the past that he's done, the bad things he's done.
Which just ties into the whole Prometheus thing I was telling you about too.
Holy shit, dude! Now it's starting to really make sense. What if this is him suffering for the bad shit he did in the past? Because in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, it's because they sold out Hamlet and stuff like that is why they're stuck in purgatory.
Yeah.
But at the same time, which that makes sense for a lot of the movie.
Right. Yeah, because it's at a certain point, Defoe says, "Are you imagining me?
Yeah.
Am I even real?"
Yeah.
There's a lot of subtle things where
they start asking
they
each other
intentionally
weird
pull you out of a natural flow of time. They intentionally make you think about there being a non-linear path to the entire thing. Okay, can I talk about the sequels now?
Yeah, we'll go ahead. Okay. We're done with everything else. We're going into the sequels, and then going into the final sequence.
All right. So, I'm sure if you've seen the movie, you know this already. But early on, Defoe tells Pattinson not to pester the seagulls because they carry the souls of sailors that have passed, and so this becomes significant later on whenever we see Edward Pattinson, his character.
Pattinson. Robert Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson. God damn it! That's not even the first time I've done that. I've done that 3 times already. Anyways, so whenever the seagull dies in the water, he is enraged, and this one certain seagull comes back. Ooh, excuse me. Anyways, it's one that we've seen already that was bothering him earlier. I can't remember what it was doing exactly. But he sees the other seagull that isn't in the water, and he just fucking flips shit.
Dude, he doesn't
beats
just
the fuck out of it.
Yeah, he doesn't just kill this seagull.
No, he plays with its carcass.
blood spews all over this rock that he just keeps beating this seagull on. And this seagull's like, it's done. Yeah. It's done for.
And the fact that Defoe had said that it's bad luck to kill a seagull really adds meaning to it, too.
It adds a certain, like, mythology to it.
I'm not sure if you noticed, but right after we see that, the camera pans up to the lighthouse and we see the wind vane. It suddenly shifts exactly opposite to how it was, which is telling of a storm.
That's showing that it made a change. It's already
completely changed the unfolding of events.
Yeah, it's already coming into effect. It was like some Final Destination shit, you know.
With that seagull though, it only had one eye, right?
Okay, yeah, you go into this. You were telling me about this earlier.
It's a little bit to follow, but so the seagull that was pestering Pattinson, the same one that he killed, it only had one eye. And we found out also that the previous wiki that was on the island with Defoe, he also had one eye. This was the wiki that Pattinson found in the lobster cage. Whenever he pulled it up out of the sea, the head only had one eye. And so that
connects a lot. And now we're just going to jump.
We also see the same, or no, it's a different seagull at this point.
It's a different seagull at the end.
So at the very ending scene, whenever we see, shall I go into it right now?
So no, let's go ahead and talk about the ending sequence. Let's talk about the final ending sequence. Well, we kind of just need to talk about all of it.
Yeah.
So this is what happens. So the final conflict between Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe just springs up out of nowhere. Well, it's not really out of nowhere. It's been
building up.
Been building throughout the whole movie. Yeah. But the final conflict happens, and they start fighting, and they fight to the ground or whatever. And he's on top of Willem Dafoe, and Willem Dafoe turns into the mermaid. And I think what I think, it doesn't show below the waist, so I'm thinking he gets sexually aroused and starts to, I don't think he starts having sex.
I think he does. I think this is the breaking point for Pattinson's character.
Yeah. So he starts.
It has to be.
So he starts at least getting aroused and starts letting his guard down with her, and starts going into it.
Yeah, he's visualizing the image of the mermaid while he's on top of Defoe.
And then, okay.
That's the point where,
it switches from the
Robert
mermaid.
Pattinson he's fucking a mermaid.
So he's pretty much fucking a mermaid, and then it switches to a disgusting form of Willem Dafoe, where he's got tentacles coming out of him.
He's got barnacles all over his face.
He's like a crustacean looking. Dude, it's so
exactly the representation of like Neptune or like Poseidon that you would imagine.
Yeah, but he really looks like something disgusting that got scraped off the bottom of the sea floor or something like that. And he's still, Robert Pattinson's still sitting on top of him, aroused, like. So you think he's probably fucking him, and he's Willem Dafoe just has this like maniacal look on his face as this hallucination, and this is where Robert Pattinson just goes fucking nuts and starts wailing on.
Yeah, he
Willem
realizes
Dafoe.
What he's doing, and he has, I don't know. It was the point where he had reached the point of temptation where he just indulged himself without consent, and he realized what he was doing. And for the time period this is in, obviously characters are probably homophobic.
Yeah, so he's like, fuck this shit.
Just goes all out. He starts beating the shit out of Defoe, and
then I believe he gets back up, and because Willem Dafoe's sitting there like, you're killing me, you know. And then I think that's when Willem Dafoe goes at him and hits him in the shoulder with the axe.
No, that was after he crawled out of the dirt pit.
Oh my god!
Pattinson. I know. There's so much to follow. It's hard.
Whatever. Either way, it comes to the fact that Robert Pattinson grabs the axe and splits Willem Dafoe's head open, and he's dead.
Yeah. And that's certainly the ending for that character.
And
can't get up from that.
Yeah, he was dead. No, he was gone because he split his head open. I mean, that's it. And this is where Robert Pattinson finally goes up the lighthouse steps, and he finally does the final indulgence of everything that has led up to this point for him. And when he opens it, and he opens the light and looks into it, and this is where what I was talking about in the first part of this podcast is they use overexposure to completely blow out
and
the
distortion
image. And they distorted the sound so much, and this is what I was talking about as well. With Robert Pattinson, 15 seconds, the emotions, so many different emotions go across his face, from this sadness at first. It's almost sad, like, I mean, it's not
sad relief.
It's like
what he's found.
It's like it's a depressing. It's kind of depressing to look at. He's enveloped with such a powerful happiness that he almost looks sad.
Yeah.
And he gets enveloped in this happiness so much that he starts screaming, and it's such a powerful. It
starts soul distorting.
And it's such a powerful, like, shot and scene. It's just, oh my god! Probably the best part of the film, in my opinion, is that part right there. And then he falls down.
Yeah, I think that entire transition from, like, normal filming and audio to everything being distorted, I think that was a transition kind of for him losing his senses. Yeah. Like, with your analogy to Icarus, him getting so close to the light that it ruins him.
Well, yeah, I'll go into that more whenever we go into our theories, but no, so he
causes him to fall.
Okay, yeah, well, he fell. He falls down the stairs, and then he falls out into outside, I think.
Yeah, it didn't really show how Pattinson went from inside the lighthouse to on the rocks.
To how he got out on the rocks. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. That's why I think it has that dreamy aspect to it.
Yeah.
But either way, he's still being picked apart by these seagulls.
Yeah, so he falls down, he winds up on the rocks, and his entrails are being pulled apart by the seagull. He only has one eye at this point.
Yeah, and this is where we connect back to the old wiki who only had one eye and the seagull who had only one eye. And if you connect those two, the wiki only had one eye, and if he was the sailor who ended up in the seagull, he could have been trying to warn Robert Pattinson to get off the island. And Robert Pattinson took the warnings as something different and killed him.
Completely misconstrued the message he was trying to.
And then he killed Willem Dafoe. And if Willem Dafoe came back as a seagull...
Oh, fuck. That could have been the seagull that was eating him.
That's what I was saying. He came back to get his vengeance on...
Oh, damn it.
He came back at the end to get his vengeance on Robert Pattinson and picks him apart.
Yeah, so there's a lot of symbols in this movie. Make sure you pay attention.
Definitely. And that's my connection of everything up into that ending. So now we've covered all the spoilers for this movie. I think we've talked this film to death.
Yeah.
We're going to now talk about what does this film mean, which I think we've pretty much gone into a lot of
it means
stuff.
Whatever you think it means, honestly.
So, as a whole, I think it's...
There's no denying that it's a story about the descent into madness.
Yeah.
That's just a fact of the film.
It's very hard for me to zero in on one meaning, because you don't really know what it's completely going for, because it feels like it's going for a bunch of different things. There's so many different aspects that's so hard to go, this means this,
Yeah.
We can just say...
I think it doesn't mean one specific thing. It means a lot of different things. So let's just start going into
our theories. Our theories about... So my theory... I was thinking about this whenever we were researching for our podcast. I thought about, it just kind of popped up in my head because I had heard about it before. I was thinking about the analogy between Robert Pattinson in the final scene going up to the light and falling down to his demise was an analogy to the flight of Icarus, who it's a story of, he was the man who had wax wings and he flew too close to the sun. The power was like too much for him and stuff like that. And that's what I was thinking a lot. The light kind of represents that thing he's striving for, and he goes up there and he gives in to this he gets so ahead of himself with it, and he gives so much of himself into it that it ultimately leads to his demise and leads to his death, because he's willing to kill to get there. So that's what I thought. That's one of my theories. I think it's an analogy to the flight of Icarus. The ending is analogy to the flight of Icarus.
So clearly mythology is a big thing with this, because I had a completely different takeaway that's still tied into Greek mythology.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, which it's not 100% original. I've seen other people talking about this, but so the story, and so there's Prometheus and there's Proteus in Greek mythology, and they're not traditionally tied together in the writings of mythology. So we have Proteus, which is supposed to be analogous to Defoe's character, and in mythology he is a old man of the sea. He's a keeper of knowledge and a friend to the sea beasts. They were supposed to know everything about everything, but hated sharing knowledge. So that ties into his selfishness with the light, with keeping the keys and not allowing Pattinson even near the top of the lighthouse. And then Prometheus, I think, at least in the last 20 minutes of the movie, Pattinson really embraced or really represented Prometheus' story. So if you're not familiar, Prometheus was a titan in Greek mythology who stole fire from the gods, and he brought it to humanity, which allowed great progress and development of many different technologies. And so his punishment from Zeus after this took place in mythology was that he was tied to a rock, and an eagle was perpetually determined to pick at his organs, and he couldn't die, so he was perpetually suffering that punishment
for eternity.
So yeah. So that really aligns perfectly with Pattinson's journey in the last 20 minutes of the film,
especially whenever obviously with him being pecked, the organs being pecked away as his punishment for
line for line the exact same thing. I mean, it's seagulls, not eagles, but all
right. So I think we finally gotten through everything we wanted to discuss. We've been here for quite a while. I'm pretty sure we went well over our half hour.
Only 18 minutes over time.
So we went well over a half hour but we had a lot we wanted to talk about this movie.
We might rethink that title so we're not limited to time.
More than half hour.
More than half hour with Carson and Braiden.
This is just our first podcast. We're probably going to be doing another one of these this weekend on the film Parasite by Bong Joon-ho.
Yep. So keep your eyes out for that.
Keep your eyes out for that. We're gonna do the same kind of setup as we did with this one, where we sit half the time to talk about the non-spoiler stuff, and the other half of the time we'll talk about the spoiler stuff. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, hope you liked it. If you got any feedback for us, go ahead and leave a comment if you like.
Yeah, and again, I really recommend you guys seeing this film if you haven't. I don't know why you'd sit through this whole spoiler review of it if you haven't seen it. That's on you for getting
the spoilers.
But yeah, I think you, if you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. And if you've already seen it, I'd recommend checking it out again, because it's such a good film.
I'm definitely gonna see it again.
All right, well, this has been the half hour. It was more like the almost full hour. And we really enjoyed talking about this film, and I hope you guys enjoyed listening. Thank you, guys.
Yep, thank you. All right, we'll see you next time.